I feel you.
Oh man,
I
that's hard to hear, man. I'm sorry that it's going so bad, especially today.
Yeah.
But now you're talking to Multi. Like, how can it be bad when you're talking to Multi?
Yeah.
Happy New Year, by the way. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to everyone out there. But yeah,
Um, so I feel you 100%, and I hope things will get better. And man, that's always sad. What about you, Gray? How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. It's a new year. It's the first windows to our minds of 2024. Yeah, that's the year. It's good. Yeah, it could be worse. I'll put it that way. We're living in a great time.
I feel you, man. I feel you 100%. So I decided this to be the topic because this is the theme of this month. Um, and what's best to ask that question? It's the best way to like introduce the topic. It's to ask the question: is there a decay in society or of society? So, question number one: what does decay mean?
decay kind of like means like something that's dying out. Normally when you think of decay, you think of like a dead body who over time rotten corpse and all that. That's normal what most people think of decay, and that's sort of what it is like for all of its definition. It's something that you know starts out fresh, but then over time becomes something else and dies over time.
Nice answer. What about you, Yuri? Do you have any answer to what does
Well,
decay mean?
I mean, if you're going to go with like the standard definition of it, it would be like the state or process of rotting or composition. But I think people are generally kind of referring to more like society. So it'd be more like the decay or the collapse of society. So, they bring up a bunch of things like pestilence, famine, economic collapse, population decline, mass migration, sabotage by like rival civilizations. Um, Basically, like kind of collapsing or reverting to like a more primitive state would be how I've generally heard people kind of talk about decay in this particular way. Um, I'm not so sure that I agree with them.
Oh, I like your take. I like it. Some positivity out there. I enjoy your take. That's amazing. So guys answered well. So my answer would be like the decline. It's like something that gets worse over time. So that's my answer. So yeah. Number two, I think Gray will be impressive in his answer just because he shows that positive side. So I will ask you first, Gray, what made the 21st century better and what made it worse than past centuries?
Well, so there's this really cool book that I read a few years ago. It's by Steven Pinker. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the guy. So he's a Johnstone family professor in the Department of Psychology at Harvard. So he's got a bit of a pedigree. He's got some bona fides behind him. But in 2018, he wrote this book called Enlightenment Now. And what he did is used well documented and widely accepted evidence for the improvement of the following. And from what I can remember, there were like 14. There's probably more in the book, but he's talking about lifespan has improved, health has improved, sustenance has improved, wealth has improved, inequality has improved, the environment has improved, peace has improved, safety, terrorism, democracy, equal rights, knowledge, quality of life, and overall happiness. They all rank higher currently than they have at any other point in history. And uses a bunch of different graphs and a bunch of different data that's widely accepted. He's not bringing it himself. He is gathering it and kind of putting it together in one place. But he made a really compelling case to me that, this whole doomer pill, this whole everything is failing, this is the worst time, everything's in decay, really is kind of a notion that, if you're only concentrating on the media, maybe you're going through a cognitive distortion and this media bias that's kind of happening. Um, So there's selection bias where, only certain stories are brought up. There is media bias of the news, where it's distortion, the fact that, if it bleeds, it leads. It is kind of what they're looking for in the news. And then with our own brains and our own cognitive distortions, if we hear multiple stories of the same type of deal, we think it's a much bigger phenomenon than it actually is. The fact that we have 24-hour news and they do report on everything does make it seem like there's a lot of bad things out in the world. And, are they really going to, do a news story of, hey, happiness is at an all-time high. Look at everything great right here. Like, who's going to watch that? No one. So it's kind of interesting, but I think there's a bunch of different factors. But I think we do a cognitive distortion called mental filtering, which is one of the most common cognitive distortions. And that's just seeing, basically embracing negative thinking and denying positive aspects of any interaction, event, or relationship. And that, in combination with what the media is doing to try and, kind of get all eyes on them, I think that leads to a very doomerist mindset. And it can get you in this black pill, so to speak, thing where you do think that, it is doomerism. Everything is going to be horrible and everything is the worst it's ever been. Sadly, or, greatly, that's not the case. That's just kind of something that we fall into. So yeah, I think that's kind of where I am on it. But I'd be interested to hear your guys' opinion.
That's very interesting. He mentions like health has increased, it's better than it's used to be. But in the
Yes.
other side, I can see why, but I can also see a counter argument to it. Uh, weight overall, there's more obesity, and if you really look at statistic, it's much higher than like 50 years ago. And being obese is bad. Let's
Yes,
be
but
honest.
what's the opposite of being obese? That would be famine.
Yeah,
So what would you rather have? Your people starving or overabundance of food? So you probably don't remember in the 70s, like I wasn't around in the 70s, but they actually had a fear that there was going to be a global famine. That was one of the reasons why we got into like genetically modifying crops.
yeah,
But we feared that it would be the other thing. So currently, even in some of the poorest nations, they average about 2,400 calories a day on their diet, which is actually 400 calories more than it is suggested by the U.S. Now I can't remember exactly what they are, but anyway, they suggest an average male of I think 40 years should have at least a 2,000 calorie diet. So this is 400 calories above that, and this is like some of the poorest nations, third world countries, as we're talking about. It seems like that's not necessarily a bad problem to have. I'd rather people have more of a choice of what to put in their bodies than no choice at all. So I don't know. I agree with you. It's not great, but when you look at the alternative, which would be famine, I don't know. Maybe it is the lesser of two evils.
you made a really good point, and that reminds me of a video I've seen one day. It was speaking about two cases side by side. For a full year, the two cases, one case was meant to become bigger and obese and overweight, and the other case was into a diet where they needed to lose fat, and at some point they both die. So both sides are kind of really bad, and it's very sad. Like if you don't eat well, it's sad. You will die if you don't eat enough. And if your body reach a certain point and you don't eat enough, your organs collapse on themselves, and they all get like torn apart and like reduced and smaller, and it's really disgusting. But when you eat too much, it's a case where you're dependent on others to lift you up, to move you around, and at some point you cannot control your organs well anymore. You cannot control your body anymore, and yeah, you become very dependent if you eat too much and you're too fat and that kind of stuff. So eat healthy, everyone. Like I know it's hard to say, but don't go to any of these two extremes because both extremes are not something I wish to anyone. It's really sad. Like that video proved me that if you're overweight, you can still die from heart disease and that kind of stuff. That's like the most common thing that can end your life. It's like heart disease or malfunction in the liver or malfunction of one of your organs due to like having too much sugar or too much calories in the day. Your body just doesn't know where to place all that energy it has, so you basically burn one of your organs. So it's really bad. But that's enough for that tangent. Um, I can see society having better health because there's more vaccine out there. There's more options to eat healthy or not. Um, and we are more aware of what's a dangerous behavior like smoking or drinking alcohol and that kind of stuff. So I can see both sides. Um, so now I will say that where society has been kind of destroyed and it's like a setback, social media. Let's be honest. Like if you look at the platform like Twitter, yes, you have access to more people, but you are more surrounded by craziness and like weird stuff happening. And the same goes for TikTok. Like these people that spends hour and hours on TikTok following like stupid people tips and like stupid people behaviors, they will be like, oh, that's an example, that's my new idol, but that new idol is like promoting stupid behaviors. So that's part of what I consider the decay, like social media as a thing. Like being an influencer is now a job, and it's not great. Like there are good influencer out there, I'm sure, but you just tend to see the bad first because that's just the way the brain is wired. You're attracted to like pity and grim ideas. So yeah. Um, Now when it comes to like what got improved is like um, I I need to think about that one actually. I will need to think about what has been improved. Well, actually, rights in general for everyone. This has been improved greatly. Now, women and men are equals, and well, I speak mainly like in USA or Canada, like these two example, and in most of Europe, I believe it's may not be the case like for some like countries in Asia or some countries in Africa. It's still places where it needs some improvement, but here in the north, we are equals. And I've seen many videos debunking like, oh, but men still earn more money than women. That's a lie. It's not true. Um, it's just not. There are many statistics proving otherwise. Like a perfect example, when mothers are going on a maternity leave, they will leave for what, a year? In some cases, I believe it's a year. While men's, it's 1 month. So of course, the men will spend less time than the woman outside of work.
And that might be more of a Canadian thing. Like that's kind of awesome that you guys do that, but here it's kind of more. I know my nephew and niece just had a kid, and they got like a month off. So
The
I don't know.
mother,
It's not
the mother
universal
as
that
well. Oh,
every
okay,
woman gets that.
okay. Well, women still get more free time, right? Than men's. Like when it comes to like births and new kids. I don't know the detail elsewhere, but they are still getting a bit more time, right? Because
Yeah,
otherwise,
it's
that's
pretty progressive here to give paternity leave, so like for the father, but maternity leave is like definitely a thing. It's enshrined in our whatever. It's a right that the mother gets for sure. But Yeah, I know it's different. I did work at a progressive company, and they did offer like 3 months for males to have paternity leave, which, it seems pretty cool. Like, you'd want to bond with that baby as soon as possible. But I don't know. You'd also want to make money. It's not like a paid leave necessarily. It's just kind of your job will still be there when you get back.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It depends. I think it is somewhat regional, but yeah, it definitely seems like there could be more done.
And on top of that, like you said you want to bond with your kid, and it's very important. Like the first 3 years of a kid, when they grow up, is essential. Like if the parents mess up there, it's sad to say, but they may have broke their child for life, and that kid will always struggle more to make connection and stuff, because these are 3 very important years where you need to be on, as a parent, you need to know what you're doing. Like if you don't know what you're doing, I highly recommend people like reading books about psychology and attachment and that kind of stuff, so they're ready to be parents, because you can leave scars for life for your kid. And even if they get like proper like support later in life, these 3 years are essential. They are the foundation of their attachment. And since we are on the attention about attachment, like there's like 3 types of attachment. There's the avoidant. um, I hope it's the right word in English. Avoidant, basically, it's the kid that didn't bond well with their parents, so they will, in the future, when they grow up, they will try to not come closer from people because they avoid contact. They avoid like being injured, because they perceive that if they get too close from someone or something, that will damage them, that will injure them. So they are avoidant because they are formed in a way where they will flee on sight instead of like bonding and having a proper connection with people. And there's the other type where it always needs attention. I forgot the exact word even in French. So that type is also not really great, because it will crave attention, and it's the kind of case where the parents did too much care, because if you care too much, you also create damage. Like you need a perfect balance of like caring and not caring, because if you care too much, you create other lacks. Like the kid that crave constantly attention will do stupid stuff just to get attention when they grow up. And as a parent, in the first 3 years, that's your job to kind of know when to give the attention to the kid, and when to like disregard it, because sometimes babies, they cry because they have needs. Then you need to meet these needs, but sometimes they cry for your attention, but you need, as a parent, it's very complicated, but you need, as a parent, to notice when they cry for attention and when they cry for their needs, basically. And there's the third case where it was the right way you educated your kid, where your kid can have a bond with people, but it also, like, the kid and the adult will be able to live without that bond. So what I mean by there is that person will not flee on sight. uh, that person will accept to be with others, but it won't need necessarily to be with others. It's really hard to explain, but like the person that constantly needs attention, sometimes that person, if that person is lonely, they will suffer from mental illness, like uh, depression, loneliness, and that kind of stuff. So that person that constantly need attention, it's it's not healthy, because when that person doesn't get the attention, that person doesn't feel good. So it's like a substance you use without saying another word that guys may think of. So yeah, you need to be like balanced in life. if you flee on sight, it's bad, but if you crave too much tension, that's also bad. So that's enough for that tension. Um, it's sad I completely forgot like the exact type. It's only the avoidant that I really clearly remember because that's the saddest one. Um, so yeah, I will let DC go on that one. So question number two: what made the 21st century better, and what made it worse than past centuries?
Hmm. I think what made the 21st century a little better is when it comes to medicine tech and oil. Because back in the day, back in the past centuries, if you ever learn history, they didn't often battle. Like most of the battles, actually, I think that's actually something that's actually worse, but we'll get into that later. But I do think health reasons, yeah, it definitely got better because back in the day, like when say the Black Plague happened, nobody knew what to do, and that's why it was so deadly. Um, yeah, and also things happened back in the day that now we know a lot more information on, like cannibalism. Some words that YouTube would censor this video for, but you know what I'm talking about. Mental health and all that. The reason why I talk about it is because back in the day, most people don't often think about, but all that stuff did happen back in the day. Just it's not talked about much because obviously there were more important events, but it's because during those times nobody really know anything about it. Same thing with animals, most as well. So we can do research. That's what made our the 21st century better, and also a little bit more of like enjoyment compared to back in the day. But I do think that even though there's a lot of things this century has done better, it actually has done a lot of things that are actually worse for our time. Like for instance, like I mentioned, like like techno oil. You know, normally most people would think, it's not a bad thing because I mean it made us win wars. But when you think about it, the more weapons, the more bullets you have, the more you're more likely going to have worse casualties. That's why nowadays wars have more casualties than say wars in years ago because they like centuries ago because most of the time they were either bound with spears, shields, swords, melees, and weapons that only fire once. Whereas now they have like a whole bunch of weapons that just destroy everything. Yeah.
Really good points there. And on top of that, since there's more people, like there's more meat. It's sad to say, but that's how wars work. Like if more people are involved, of course more people will be deleted. So yeah. Question number three: is the gaming industry and is the movie and shows industry better today or 30 years ago? Starting with Marvel.
Uh, I would probably say I don't really think that that one really counts because it's like I said, it's just an opinion. For instance, so I don't think it really counts. Like say if it's better because I mean there could have been people that could have said 30 years ago that whatever show they had on was terrible, but then there could have been people who said it was amazing. Same thing in art century. There are people who enjoy video games. There are people who enjoy movies. There are people who hate video games. There are people who hate movies, etc., etc. So it's like I don't really think that one really has like a right or wrong answer.
Yeah, that's like the point of it.
Yeah, yeah,
um,
it has a right or
but
wrong.
what would you think? What would you say as a person? That's more the question. Do you think the gaming industry, like take it as one thing, and
Mm,
do you think that movie and TV shows got improved or worse based on you,
mm,
on your opinion?
I think I'm gonna. I think it's more downright the middle because in some aspects, yeah, it's better, but in some aspects, it's not. So there, I I'd say it's downright the middle.
Okay, that's a fair shot. What about you, Gray?
Yeah, so some aspects of it are better. So a lot like what DC is saying. I think a lot of aspects are better. The fact that there is so much choice now. Like if you're talking about gaming specifically, I remember when games kind of first came out, like the first well, I mean, I wasn't around when Pong was out or anything like that, but I remember like the Super Nintendo. Like, it was great. You had cartridges. It seemed like your friends had a couple of games, you had a couple of games. It was a little bit different than now, where they do have a lot of these in-game ads. You could definitely say certain aspects of it are wrong, but still, I mean, it's like now when I was hanging out with like my nephew and stuff, it's like they're all playing Fortnite. They all have a whole bunch of games that are all available, and they're all able to play the same thing at the same time, and they're able to play it from like their own homes. I remember LAN parties when I was like in high school. That's you had to actually bring your whole stupid computer, hook it up with a LAN cable, and then you could actually play together in like Quake or whatever. Um, it's vastly improved now because of that. Also, there's just so many different types of games. There were basically like run and gun platformers. There was like racing games. There were like fighting games. But now there's so much, and I mean, I guess there were RPGs, but they were a little bit more like top down, turn based. They weren't exactly like what we're getting today. What you see in like these amazing games, like the graphics, they are so I was just watching the GTA 6 trailer or whatever. Some of those graphics, some of those shots, I don't know that I would have known that that's a game. Um, Visually, they're looking much more beautiful. There's a lot more that's going into each game, like the intricate details, the a way that you can play it, the different types of games that are designed for different types of people. Like there's so many different. If you were to say platformer now, you'd still have to like go through subcategories where before that wasn't really a thing. There's just so many ways that things have improved, but there are things that I think are a negative. It is kind of a trade-off with that choice. Well, and with the free games, essentially, you can download it. You're going to have some way that the company wants to monetize it. So then you're going to have like in-game transactions, in-game ads, all that. Yeah, I didn't have that with like Super Nintendo cartridges back in the day. That may be a little bit worse, but at the same time, like there was no way that, 100 of us could all be playing the same game at the same time from different places on the world. So that seems a lot better. And then TV, it used to be a joke. Like if a film actor went to TV, it's okay, his career has ended. Obviously, they don't know it. And we had like kind of a golden age in TV recently. I think it was like kind of during the Game of Thrones time. But a lot of those bigger actors were now coming to TV because there is more that you can do with that. Instead of just like a 2-hour show, now you can have like 8-10 episodes. You can make like a 10-hour thing. You can really dive deep into a story. You can adapt a book much better. I really like when they're doing that, for instance, adapting an entire book into a season of a show. That seems to be really that seems to be one of the things that this TV platform is great at. With movies, it does feel like we've kind of taken a step back because they are banking on these huge blockbusters to kind of pay for everything else. So it does feel like there has been kind of a letdown recently. But if we're just talking about like media and entertainment, I think we are in a huge heyday where anything you want to find, you can find out there. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of bad shows for you, but that doesn't mean that it's not somebody else's favorite show. And that doesn't mean that you can't find your favorite show or whatever. There's just so many more to kind of look through now. But yeah, I still think when you weigh up the negatives and positives, everything is in a much more positive direction. But you know, half full, I guess.
I like both of your answers because that is very similar to what I think. Now, when it comes to gaming, my my opinion on that is very different. I think the biggest asset, the best thing about gaming today that wasn't around like 30 years ago or something is networking, like playing with others, like Halo, big full-on action game where you can play 16 player 8 versus 8 and you can chat with your friend and stuff. This is the best thing we have currently in gaming. But, and this may show how I kind of stopped caring about games in the last few years, because I'm not that aware of many games, but I feel like creativity has died because most games I've heard of, and I feel like most games that are made are open worlds. But again, that comes from someone that kind of gave up in the gaming industry probably like around the release of Xbox One. Because what are the biggest IP? GTA, open world. Assassin's Creed, open world. Starfield is one of the most purchased game this year, I believe, or I don't know. Open world. Spider-Man 2, open world. Um, I'm sure I can go on and on about all of the
Not to be a
open world.
jerk, but Spider-Man and Starfield are kind of semi-open worlds. But yes, I get your point. I just had to be a jerk.
Yeah, I haven't played any of these two games because I didn't give a rat's butt about that one. But yeah, I feel like these these people making the games, they're like, we want our game to succeed, and what succeeded is, oh, this game, this franchise, Watchdog. Like I mentioned, mainly Ubisoft because that's the company I feel that has let down the most its customer bases because they just gave up on many IPs they deemed like not worthy, or they deemed like not financial like success. Even if they used to be successful, they're just no longer as successful as other brand they did. Um, how many Far Cry do we have? We have like 8 Far Cry. Always the same thing, open world. Like, and based on what I've heard from game making, most of the time, most of the open world they have like that software for like the background and the stage and the level, and they just copy paste it, and then they change a bit the color scheme to match what they want. But that's basically like the same models all the time, so you don't come up with like brand new ideas, you just mix up what was already made in the past.
Yeah,
um,
but it still could be innovation by doing it better. Like I'm trying to think of like some of the most popular games. So like Fortnite comes to mind. It's not like it did something original, but it kind of did it a little bit better or a little bit flashier, and then they were able to, put in the dances and all the outfits and everything. It seemed to get a little bit more attention, even though it wasn't doing something particularly new. Kind of the same with what's that one that everyone loved for a minute? Rocket League. So it's like we've had racing games, we've had soccer games, but somehow you put them together. It's not exactly a new game, but it seems somewhat innovative. I don't know. I can definitely see what you're saying, but I don't know. Then when you go to things like racing, like now they're in Gran Turismo, I can't even remember. It's 20 something. But I mean, it's like they're not trying to do something new with that, but they're trying to get every element of it from the sound design to the actual like layout of each one of those tracks. They're trying to make it as accurate as possible, and it keeps getting more accurate, and they keep giving you more options to like change the cars or alter them in a way that is actually
realistic.
functional. And I don't know, like there is innovation even in this same thing that they're doing, kind of like you mentioned with like the open worlds with those types of games. Like, yeah, it is kind of the same thing, but each take on it seems to refine it a little bit differently.
The other thing I'm surprised none of you mentioned, maybe you just didn't thought of that, but physical media is dying. Like the best example I got is Metroid Prime Remastered, which is a game they did this year. Um, Try to find a physical copy. Good luck. And these rats at Nintendo, they knew what they were doing. They were like, let's have that surprise release and let's make it very limited so we get bunch of money fast. But they didn't really care for the customers, so now it's like the best way to purchase it is like digitally. So physical media does die.
For sure. And I'm not saying that that's a good thing or anything like that, but it is a trade-off. Like I remember at midnight waiting at the store to get a game and then bringing it back. Like you have to drive back, then you need to whatever. Now, literally at midnight, you can be playing that brand new game if you pre-order it because it's digital. It is released to you right away. I mean, granted, that may just be like a half hour more, but you didn't have to waste the time going to the store. You didn't have to waste the time waiting. Now it's just like the second it's released, you can play it. That does seem like a trade-off. I don't know if that's worth having digital to where they could, take it away at any point. I think the PlayStation Store just got rid of, I can't remember how many thousand. I think it was like 23,000 titles, and they were including things that people had purchased through the PlayStation Store, just gone. Like it's just no longer on there, so you don't have access to it. There's no way that you could have put that onto physical media. It's just gone. That does suck. That is definitely a downside. But the upside is like instant, like you don't have to now mail order away for a game or wait for it to show up because they didn't have it in your local store. You don't have to trudge down to the local store, wait in line, whatever. I don't know if it's worth it, but it's definitely a trade-off. I don't know.
And yeah, you make really interesting point, but again, I'm so sad that physical media is dying off. And again, you mentioned it, but a lot of games are microtransaction, or like the other issue I got with like modern gaming is how much focus is put into like multiplayer. And it's important. That's like one of the biggest thing we had with current day gaming is how much you can play with people online out there. But they like people who are making the games, they believe that, oh, everyone wants a multiplayer experience, so like most of the games are driven toward that. And I will give a great example: Rainbow Six Siege. I don't know if you guys are aware of that game.
Yeah, I'm aware of it.
Aware of
Great.
it. I haven't played that. A little bit more Call of Duty than Rainbow, but I do understand.
It's fully multiplayer. The solo, if you can call it a solo, sucks. And it's sad because I'm a huge fan of like the old days of Rainbow Six. And the same goes for like Tom Clancy, like Rainbow Six, Splinter Cell, um, Ghost Recon. I used to like so much every single entry, but Rainbow Six lost me with Siege. I played a few hours because I was like, oh, it's fun, it's cool, it's the new game, it's the game I've been waiting for like 5 years. But then it has nothing else to offer me. I played enough online. I will go play another game. Um, and the other example is Halo Infinite, the horrendous game that's not finished, and they're selling. It's a new trend now. Every game needs a DLC because they want so much profit. I get it. It's an industry. When you sell a game, you want the game to bring money on the table. I get it. I understand that aspect. But you cannot sell your soul because you no longer provide a proper game. Now, to have the proper game, you need to purchase like every DLC the game has. And the perfect example is freaking Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm Connections. I'm a huge Naruto fan. I purchased many Naruto games. I have the books. I have like my physical Naruto object is huge. My collection is huge, and they dare to give us a freaking game just like the previous one. And they did change two or three things to pretend it's a new game. but they sell this game full price and add all of the greedy DLCs, the price go even higher. It's disgusting behaviors. Um, Another example, um, Advance Wars 1 plus 2 Reboot Camp, another game I played this year, another major disappointment. Um, the artificial intelligence in that game sucks. And it's worst because it's a remake of a game that was made 20 years ago, and the artificial intelligence 20 years ago was actually better than the one we got now. So it's insulting because this game is full price and it's a weaker, it's a downgrade version of game we already had in the past. So this showcase greed because not only they sold us a game that was already a thing 20 years ago, but they sold us a worse game. So yeah, gaming industry I don't think is well right now. I think my experience this year at least is two massive disappointment for me. Out of three game I played, the third one was Metroid Prime Remastered. This one they did it right. Metroid Prime Remastered, I liked it a lot, but
I'm just
that's
saying, if you're comparing the game industry to 30 years ago, though, you don't even have Metroid Prime. Like,
yeah,
I can't remember what Metroid would have been 30 years ago, but
that was like the
I,
first few Metroid games, like
yeah.
the first one actually. But yeah,
So I'm just saying, like, it's gone like leaps and bounds since then. Like the actual gameplay, the actual ability, the graphics. On top of that, the ability to play with multiple players. Like, yeah, you could have played like, with two players, but most of those aren't co-op. They're one at a time. Your turn, now my turn. I don't know. There's so many things that are better about what is being offered now. But I do understand what you're saying about these downsides. And, it would be nice to physically have a copy of it. Like, I still do look at some of those old cartridges I used to have. Uh, I haven't looked at a physical game in years. So it is interesting.
I'm a big collector, man. I just like to touch the product. I'm like, that's mine, and that's a game I can decide to put on. Like, that's a cartridge for my Switch, that's a disc for my Xbox, that kind of stuff. Like, I just like the feel of it. It feels real. It feels like it's yours, you know? And you just don't get that feeling with like all of these games you purchase digitally. It's not a thing. So I spoke so much about the gaming industry. Like, I think in terms of graphics, it improved a lot. And like how simple it is to play most games, it's also amazing. But they like creativity. That's one sin they have, and the other is greed. Again, oh, we want to maximize our profit with all of these microtransaction or all of these advertisement and that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's the gaming aspect. Like 30 years ago, for example, I'm not the biggest fan of these first few old games, but I'd say like the best era
Some of them were great.
for me, the best era of gaming is like starting from Nintendo 64 to like um Xbox 360. Like after 360, this is when I think it started to fall apart. And before 64, there are some exception, like the first few Metroids that were great. Um,
I could say like the Metroids, the Castlevanias, the Contras. There were
the
some
Mario,
really fun games out there, but even Neo Geo had some really fun stuff, and that would have all been before 64. It depends. Like, there's also a lot of trash games out there now. There's also been a lot of trash games since 64. So I don't know. I think, everyone has like kind of their whatever era, but if you saw the advancement from like 8-bit to 16-bit, like it was huge leaps and bounds. And I don't know. I think you'd be hard pressed not to enjoy what's going into a game today versus, you know, anything on Atari, anything on like the really any of those primitives. Even taking like Rocket League, you know, again, it's soccer, it's with cars, but if you look at like the predecessor of that, like Pong or whatever, like it's two lines and then like one little square that can be a ball that, you know, it goes back and forth. Like just what they have done is just like amazing. I don't know. I think there's you'd be hard pressed not to say that like yes, a whole bunch of aspects have improved since then. But I don't know. Maybe I'm biased. Old games, a lot of them sucked, man.
Yeah, I agree on that. Like, but my favorite era is still like from Nintendo 64 to like Xbox 360. Like, I don't have a PlayStation 5. I don't have a Xbox. Like after the Xbox One, I don't know what they released. I know they released a new Xbox after the Xbox One. I don't have these two, and I don't plan on having these two because I don't like current gaming at all. So that's enough for that part. Now, when it comes to TV shows and movies, I do think there are massive improvements. Um, in my end, I do think entertainment has improved. Now, of course, sometimes parts of entertainment aren't that great. Shades on TV shows and movies that spread like bad diversity, like Cloak and Dagger second season, where every men are trash and they don't have a balance there. Like if you hate men, stay away from my entertainment. If you hate women as well, I will say that if you hate like any people at all, stay away from entertainment. You know, if you do a satire, then I can understand. But if it's not a satire and you're trying to make a drama, try to be realistic and not like in your own butt. If I can place it that way. Um, but yeah, most of entertainment and movies, I do think they improved, and I I like new movies. Uh, some old movies I like them, but I feel like they don't always age well. Um, maybe it's because I don't have that nostalgia toward these movies, or maybe it's because they really don't age well. So yeah, I do think that aspect has greatly improved outside of like um, content that is not that great. There's always these exception, you know. Um, so yeah, but again, physical media dies as well in terms of like TV and movies because now to watch a new thing, you cannot like expect every single movie or TV show to have like their physical release. Now you kind of need to subscribe to Netflix, Paramount Plus, or whatever the subscription service there is out there, because it now it's really hard to find physical stuff. Um, so yeah, that's again the same issue where everything becomes digital, and it's sad because again I said that I'm a collector. I like to have my own stuff, and we can say the same with music. Like how many artists are like, oh, we no longer have disc, it's all on Spotify or all on this or that, and you're like, okay, it's sad, I miss my disc.
Which is a double-edged sword as well. Yeah, I don't have like the album covers. I'm not like flipping through and actually like reading the liner notes or anything like that now. But my God, like I've got an entire like everybody's entire like discography at my fingertips. Like I it was kind of the same thing with like an iPod. Like, okay, yeah, I've got to change it to MP3 quality, so I'm going to lose some of the fidelity in this, but I don't have to literally carry this like binder full of CDs. I don't know. That might have been before your time, but I got to tell you, like it was CDs were still a thing when I was in high school, and I remember having like the biggest, stupidest binder of it. Finally, burnable CDs seem to be a thing. So then it's like I literally had like a spindle of like 100 burned CDs, and it was impossible and super dangerous to like try and find the album I'm looking for. Like, yeah, it's probably, just as dangerous looking at my phone, but it saves so much time and space to have it all on Spotify. And the other cool thing is the artist actually gets paid, and so does the songwriter from Spotify's royalties. Where, I was buying a lot of used CDs or I was burning it. They didn't get anything off of that. So I don't know. Like, there are trade-offs with it, but I hear what you're saying. Like, there is no physical media. Like, I have a whole bunch of records that I still have on my walls. I haven't put a record on an actual like phonograph forever. Like, it's been a minute. But I think I've listened to the most music I ever have in like the last 2 years, and that's since I got a Spotify membership or whatever. It's kind of amazing because they've got everything right there. It's right at your fingertips. You can get that album instantly. Like, I don't know. It's a real trade-off because the other thing is it levels the playing field for a small guy. Like, how would you get into, I'm trying to think like what the biggest record store, I don't know. Did you guys have like Best Buys and shit? Like,
Yeah, in Canada,
I'm trying to think like Walmart or something. Like,
both.
how would, as a small band, how would you get your album like there? But now everyone has access to Spotify. Everyone can listen to your album. So it's different, but it in one way opens up the floodgates to you could literally have anything now, where we were kind of stuck to whatever the people at whatever store, their buying department decided, yes, we will have that in our store.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's a huge trade-off, man.
I do like the fact that we can have Spotify and these, but I miss my disc as well. That's the thing. But yeah, I think that closes off the third question. And we will ask question number 4 to Gray first. Is there a decay of society in the last 30 years among all spheres? Political, entertainment, human, etc., etc.?
I really don't think so. I have this cartoon in front of me. I was going to share it, but I think it's simple enough. So like the first panel of it says 1840. The modern bookworm is just too busy reading about the world to look at it. 1880. No one talks anymore. We just take our daily newspapers in silence. 1910. The magazine is destroying conversation. We can even read as we walk. 1960. Television has put an end to family discussion. 1980s. Thanks to the Sony Walkman, antisocial isolation is now the norm. 2015, we're so absorbed in our phones that we don't notice it. If you look, like, every bit of technology or innovation, it really does change things, but I'm not sure that it's a decay. Like, if we all went back to the only media that we have are books or the written word, I don't know, that would feel like a decay to me. I guess it depends on how you want to kind of define decay, but it's changing, yes. I think in a lot of ways it's getting a lot better, but I know from listening to a lot of history and then looking into it myself, this whole like partisan news thing, that's not even new. In some of the original elections in the US, they had competing newspapers that were just propaganda rags, and they were 100% on one side. So if you wanted to get your side's news, you would still get that paper. If you want the other side's news, you'd get the other paper. And they were salacious. They told a whole bunch of lies. It's very similar to what we have going on now, just it was in written form. I don't know that every bit of our media has necessarily changed. There are certain societal norms that have definitely changed, but there's so much advancement. When we were talking before, so life expectancy in 1770, for the global average, it was 29 years. And in 2012, it's now 70 years. That's pretty amazing. For child mortality in 1800s, it was nearly 43%. And in 2015, now it's less than 4%. It looks like it's about 3.5% worldwide. The prevalence of undernourished people, when you look at the world in 1991, it was about 18%. And right now it's about 11% in the world. That's undernourished. So that would be, famine, anything like that. Just there isn't ability of food. People who are literate in the world's population in 1800, 84% were illiterate. And in 2014, now it looks like about 17% of the world is illiterate. Um, you can keep going under like different political regimes. If you go from like the 1800s till now, there was so much either colonial or autocracy or closed autocracy or possible open autocracy, but there was practically zero democracy. And if you look in 2015, there's nearly 4 billion people, a little over 4 billion people who are now in democracy. And
This
then when you get to, sorry, please go right ahead, sir.
when it comes to democracy, here's the thing. Um,
It could be
it's
positive, but it's not an autocracy. You at least get a choice.
yes, but money control, like at least in Canada, money control like the government, and like it's
I don't know if that's different in any
it's
country.
because
Like,
money control the government. They feel like they owe something to like the the companies more than the people. So a lot of their decision making is not aimed at the people, but more like to the industries and stuff. Like it's really hard to say. Like yes, we vote, but are we really voting for something that represent us, even if we know exactly what are the party, what they are supposed to offer? Hmm.
yeah, I mean, I have been through a bunch of different presidents here. I don't feel like any of them were ever my choice or ever represented me. I understand what you're saying, but I think the places that you can make the most difference is like the local ones. You can actually make a choice in your town, like who you want for mayor,
At
or
least
it kind of
that's an idea where you live, but here in Canada, man, even
you got to have some sort of local representatives, right? That
even
you
our
they get put on some
mayors,
sort of
even
ballot.
our mayors are doing like stupid shit.
I mean,
It's
ours are too, man. Like, I'm not saying we invented corruption, but we put our own spin on it here. Um, yeah, and I'm not saying that it is the perfect form of government or anything like that. But when you're talking about like an autocracy or some sort of authority that's you don't have any choice, like there's not even the illusion of choice.
yeah.
It's you're going to do this. You are a peasant. I would choose this, even if this is not satisfactory. There's hope. I don't know that there is when you're just like some peasants, but maybe I'm looking at it wrong. The other one is self forever sleeping. If you look at like the 1900s, it was very high. It looks like it was almost 20 per 100,000 people. And when you're looking in 2020, it's just over 10. It looks like it's about 11 per 100,000 people. So, I mean, like, that's not great improvement, but it's almost halved. So, every aspect that I can think of, again, if you want to go over those ones: lifespan, health, sustenance, wealth, inequity, the environment, peace. So, DC did mention, like there happen to be a lot of wars and there's a lot of casualties. Actually, so there are a lot of wars. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
say that there aren't,
There's
but
one right now.
there
Actually, there are
actually
two.
are less wars than there were in the past. Like, I wish I had brought up the chart for this one, but at any given time, there were like upwards of like 23 wars going on throughout the
Yeah.
world. Right now, right now is a little bit more intense with the Russia Ukraine
Yeah.
thing and the whole Middle East thing. But the last data that I saw, I think it went up to like 2021. Like there were like currently like 12 wars or something like that. It does seem like there are less. And then the way that we're doing the wars, like a lot of drone piloting things. It's a lot less man on the ground. And like when you look at like the way that wars went throughout the years, like you had like the storming of the beaches on Normandy. It was a lot of like troops on the ground. That's bad. But when you get back to like the Continental Wars or like the wars in like the 17 to 1800s, it was like dudes marching, lining up in lines, just like taking shots at each other. Like, I don't know. I'm not sure if it is more humane now, but I think I'd rather have like a robot take me out than like stand in a line of like 100 guys pointing guns at another 100 guys just shooting it. I don't know.
War
I think I'd
sucks.
rather go out fast.
You know,
Yes.
you guys are
So it sucks.
you guys were just talking all those presents and then that, and I was like making a Marvel vs. DC poster that literally has that, and it's certainly I'm gonna post on my social media after the podcast, but I'm almost confident
yeah.
it's gonna get taken down. And it's gonna cause a riot. A lot of people going after me at that point.
But the other things that I'd say is like knowledge. We just have so yes, there is like fake news out there, and there's a whole bunch of political opinions that seem to be biased. Again, we kind of talked about media. If it bleeds, it leads. So they don't want to necessarily report on the nicest of stories out there, but they are going to go ahead and report on any accident or any tragedy that's going to get eyes. So that does suck. So we are definitely subject to our biases of seeing these things and then, thinking that this is more prevalent than it actually is. But when you look at like knowledge that's out there, you can find any bit of information. I'm a little bit older than you guys, but I remember when they were telling us like the internet is not good information. You can't use that. You have to use encyclopedias. Did you guys ever have to crack into the volumes of encyclopedias to like write a report or something?
I did.
It is
in
ridiculous.
elementary school.
You basically have like one paragraph on like any given subject, and that's it. Like that is your entire knowledge on it. Like it just sucks. Where now you can bring up just a breadth of information, like so much. I don't know. I would have to think. Yes, we're lazy as hell, and we're concentrating on flashy celebrity stories or tragedies, but just the amount of information that is out there, the knowledge that we could get, it's just, I don't know, it's so many levels above what would have been available to like the given peasant in like 1800. And then the quality of life, just there is something to having running water, to have like in ground heating. I don't know, like car seat warmers. There's just so many little things that are, there's stupid things that we don't necessarily need, but God, it ticks up that enjoyment just a little bit more. The fact that we have changes of clothes, that we regularly bathe, just the quality of life, the fact that we have antibiotics. Like Jesus, you get cut on something, you're not going to just die now, or you don't just lose a limb because of infection. I don't know, just there's so many improvements. And then when you look at overall happiness, again, I did kind of bring up those self-forever sleeping stats, but there's also self-reported surveys. I mean, granted, are you ever going to tell anybody your true state? Are some people going to play that close to the vest? Yeah, a survey may not be the best, but it does seem to be the best information that we've had over time. And people are claiming that they are happier now than a lot of other times. So I don't know. I used to be really doomer pilled. I thought everything was going, to hell in a handbasket, so to speak. And I think I didn't give things credit. I was really looking at things with this kind of filtering cognitive distortion where, you kind of focus on the bad things. You kind of cherry pick them, and they're what stands out in your memory. But there's so much good going on right now. I got to say, I don't think we're in decay. I could be wrong, though.
Yeah, I think you make really great points. I really like it, but here's the thing I want to say about batting and that kind of stuff. Even in the Middle Age, they were batting. It's just a misconception that people were all dirty and stuff. It's just during a specific time in the Middle Age that they stopped, and it's when we had plagues and sickness like that. But
But they didn't have toilets and running water and water on
yeah,
demand. Like, I don't know if you
yeah.
still have an old water heater or if you have like one of those tankless ones where it's just hot water on demand and you could take like a 2 hour long shower if you want to. They
There
didn't have
were
that.
there were like public baths, which is a very different experience. But they were public like hot tub and that kind of stuff. So they had ways to make the water warm, but not necessarily in every house. But people were still like they still had that kind of choice to be like clean. But that's enough for that very small tangent. I think the biggest decay is more like people approach to politics now. Apparently, we cannot get along if we are not in the same page. Like the right cannot get along with the left, and I don't know if that was always a thing or if social media and that kind of stuff made it worse. But that's one decay I see. Like we are different, right, guys? We know that.
Yep.
Like we are similar in ways, but we are different in others, and I think we can still get along,
Yep.
and we can enjoy the presence of each other. I believe. I think.
Yep.
Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I sound crazy. Gray, what do you think of that?
Yeah, you're crazy.
Okay, I'm crazy.
No,
Okay.
we get along, but I mean, like you gotta think like what that is, like that whole like right versus left, red versus blue, whatever. It is tribalism when you kind of break it down. Like I don't know that that is anything new. It's just our way of doing that same thing. It's kind of the same thing with like team sports or sports. It's kind of that whole you want to be a part of a community, and somehow we have all these biases where we have the in-group out-group biases. It is interesting, but that's what I was trying to say with like the newspaper and stuff, like back around the time of like the US revolution. There you could literally get the type of news that you're looking for. That doesn't appear to be new, and they were vitriolic and they spread horrible, scandalous rumors about the other politicians, the ones on that. It doesn't seem to be a social media thing. They were just doing it in print form. It's weird, but it doesn't seem to be new. Like this whole us versus them thing, that seems to be going back since the dawn of man, and then this political tribe thing, that doesn't seem to be a new thing. Like I think they were like Whigs, and I can't remember what the other party was back then, but it was still the same type of deal, us versus them.
I think social media has made it more in your face. Maybe that may be the explanation.
Yeah, I agree.
But I do think life in general got slightly better over the last 30 years because equal rights, and this is amazing. Like if you go in Europe or here or in the USA, um, it's the great aspect of like what improved, and all of the antibiotic, the medicament, the pills, the ways to cure stuff, it has gotten better. Vaccine and that kind of stuff, medical care. Uh, that's a massive improvement. Um, the other thing is, um, I think, um, yeah, I have a blank in my mind right now. So I will pass the mic to DC. Is there a decay in society in the last 30 years among all spheres?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, there is. There's a decay, and like I said earlier, there's a decay in technology where, technology is kind of taken over, and plus, not to mention, given how even technology has its own problems, that as well. Also, the fact that with more oil and stuff, wars can have worse casualties. Same thing with let's see, like research. If you don't like there are things it has done better, like research and all that. But I think that's like the only good thing. Everything else is straight up bad. I
Okay.
I do think that there's a huge decay.
Decay.
Yeah.
Okay. I like your points. Anyhow, um, before we go over the video, guys will choose from the playlist. DC, search our beloved playlist. Do you remember where to find it?
Yeah, I'll just go into the Discord. Um,
Yeah. Um, once you found it, you get to pick and choose a video for today.
Nice. I'm
And
excited to see what he picks because, yeah, there were some fun ones on that list.
and
Where- Where's the playlist? Which one?
it's in our co-host chat,
Oh.
which went
found
really down. It's so far away in my DMs.
This is what I ran into last time too. I was like, "Oh right, I should have had this ready." Or not last time. I had
So
that
now-
one ready. The time before.
Now it's on top now.
All
'cause I
right.
just said I in it.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh. All right.
Anyhow, small tangent. It's possible we may have a leftist. Remember
Nice.
Alex Royale from yesterday?
Oh yeah.
He is a leftist.
Oh yeah.
And he is open
Oh yeah.
for it. The question is, will he be able to join us on January 31st? That's more the question. But he is like, why not? So maybe we found our leftist, guys, after like
Hey, that'd be
3
awesome,
months of delays and stuff.
man. Well, I mean, just in that one aspect, but I'd like to think that we provided other interesting topics to talk about in the meantime.
Yeah.
Yeah. I found the video we're gonna do today. It's
Hell
It's
yeah.
the one that says Britain has a free speech problem, because I also think this kind of works into what we were talking about. But yeah.
Yeah, bro. I
Nice.
trust you well. That's amazing. So, Gray or yourself can screen share it because my potato computer won't survive it.
Well, I'm on my phone, so I don't know how I can even screen share.
Okay.
So maybe Gray,
Yeah, if you guys can vamp for a second, I'll bring it up.
All
So that comes back to like one of the aspect I feel is lost in Decay. Freedom of speech. This is clearly in Decay, I believe.
Yeah.
It's one thing that is kind of forgotten because we don't like making people like uncomfortable. Everyone must be happy, but it won't happen, guys. It just doesn't exist. You will
Yeah.
always make someone angry somewhere.
Yep.
So stop being like politically correct on every single thing.
Yep.
But you chose well. That's amazing.
Yeah. I was like, which one's the one that fits more into Decay? And I thought, Britain has a free speech problem. And I was like, that seems to fit well.
And I know from which channel this is, but I don't think I've seen the full video actually. I've just seen the title. I was like, oh, that's in Window to Our Mind. But yeah, you're right, bro. Like, wow, I could not choose better.
Yeah.
So
Sweet.
I
It took a second, but yeah, I think I got her.
I haven't seen the video again. So it's the first time we will cover that, and I do like the channel it's from. So
Yeah, I don't think I'm familiar with her. I don't think I've had the pleasure before.
she is doing great content. I like it.
All right, well let's give it a try. Let me know if for some reason the volume's way too low or something. But yeah, here we go.
Today, I want to talk about free speech and some issues that I've personally noticed here in Britain. England is the birthplace of classical liberalism. Hi, how you doing? So while I was editing this video, I realized that I use words like liberal and liberalism a lot throughout. And so I thought I would kind of add this part into the video to make it clear what I mean and what I'm referring to when I use those words, because it kind of dawned on me that these words mean different things in different parts of the world. So within this video, when I'm using the word liberal or liberalism, I'm referring to the traditional British understanding of what these words mean. The type of liberals that I'm talking about are the ones who believe in democracy, meritocracy, who believe that you and I should be able to own property. The types of liberals who believe in the marketplace of ideas, which is the idea that all ideas should be brought forward, and through things like evidence and debate, we can decide which ideas are the best for advancing humanity. I'm referring to the type of liberalism that is against authoritarians, the ones who believe that the government should be more of a referee rather than your parent.
Pause.
You know, they believe that the government should be in place in order to help maintain societal order so that we don't kill each other.
Okay, so
Sorry, I thought she was almost done with that sentence, so I wanted to let it go. Apparently, if you hold down, it starts going double time. I did not realize that until this very moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, sorry
I
about that.
like your point of views on that, and like I think her views on liberal is great because authoritarian is kind of wrong, and giving freedom is kind of good. Um, I I do think that kind of freedom of speech issue she kind of mentioned earlier, maybe not just where she is. I think if this is like what she talks about happens in Britain, I do think it has a risk in happening like in USA and where we are. So even if she speaks about her experience in her country, I do think it will relate and resonate with what's going on in Canada and down in the USA, because we are still in that kind of very similar bubble. Even if we are different countries, we live
For
similar
sure.
experience. So I just wanted to say that even if it's her own experience, I think it's not that far from ours. um
No, it's definitely not. It is like the same ideas and the same principles that the founders of the U.S. Based, like our entire country on. The whole ideas behind it, they are liberal ideas. It is the Enlightenment principles. It's really sad that the U.S. has really screwed everything up and screwed everyone up with, needing this clarification that somehow we're just conflating all leftists are liberals. I really hate that. I do wish, as someone who identifies as a liberal, I do wish that that didn't automatically make people in the U.S. think that I'm, well, I was going to say some blue-haired pronoun freak or whatever, but I guess I did have blue hair just a few months ago. But I don't know. Like, liberal generally just means leftist here. So I do like that she clarified. It sucks that she has to. I wish we had never conflated that here. I don't think you guys do that as much up there,
no.
right? Like, that's kind of more like, yeah.
Here
Where here, for some reason, liberal became just the dirty word that everyone calls the leftists. It's either conservatives or liberals. And it's like, what? Like, but the people that you're calling liberal have no liberal ideas behind what they're doing, and what you guys as conservatives are trying to conserve seems to be liberal principles. So, like, why did we go with this such imprecise speech? I don't know.
and here in Canada, I will basically speak about how we are. We are not that much into tribalism. Like, um, it's rare. Like when you ask someone if he is right or left leaning, most cases are like, I don't know, or we are in between, or like we still
Yeah.
kind of get along each other. And it's rare because yesterday we kind of Alex and I, after you accidentally ended the stream, we recorded like,
You did the stream?
yeah.
Shit.
So I needed to
I know I was on a bunch of cold medicine yesterday, but I swear I didn't do that. I'm sorry, man. I apologize.
ended
I
it.
did not realize that had happened.
So we went
Oh.
like, we traded another video, and like before we went back and recorded, we talked a bit, and I realized it was kind of a leftist, and I was surprised because I think it's the first person that exactly knows where they are lining, like at least from Canada and such. Um,
Nice.
and I was surprised. I was like, oh, he's a leftist. That's interesting. Um, but yeah, here.
Well, I didn't realize that I'd ended the stream. I'm sorry, man. That really sucks. I remember hitting leave studio a bunch. It like wouldn't let me out. I don't know. I'm sorry, man.
That's fine.
Sorry, that just kind of took me off guard. But yeah, I agree. Like, so when I was living in Canada, it was like just at the end of crap. Now I can't even remember his name. It was Stephen. He was the conservative dude before Trudeau. Now I'm totally blanking. But it was weird. So like it was the conservative government or whatever, conservative prime minister. It did not seem that conservative, but I was coming from a very red state here where conservative might mean something else. But it was a huge culture shock. It seemed like everything was a lot more progressive, even though it was conservative during the conservative government's whatever term when I was up there. I don't know. I think there's a lot. I guess it's getting into a lot that's not necessarily free speech, but yeah, I like that you guys aren't just conflating every leftist as a liberal. I like that you guys still actually use the word, and like that's what she's doing. She's saying I'm talking about the British term. Sadly, we are the ones who screwed that up, so that they have to clarify that. But yeah, it just became this weird way of making fun of leftists here for some reason.
So here's another thing. Like most of I will give my family as a good example. Like most of my family are feminists, and they also hold like a lot of conservative values and ideas. Like in my family, we value family a lot. And if you go in the USA, like what it means to be a feminist means you must focus on your job and yourself instead of like building a family and stuff. So that's the other thing that is very different here in Quebec, at least. We can hold similar value to leftist people, but also conservative at the same time. That's why most of us are either we don't know or we are more centrist people. It's because we align with a lot of stuff from both sides. That's also why I think we get along most of the time. And there's also that small portion and that small corner of countryside people, because that's all they know, that are kind of bigots sometimes. Like they hate progressive ideas, and they fear change, but this is a very small portion. And even there, like we will still most of the time still talk to them and not necessarily like snap on them or create conflict with them, if you know what I mean. We let them be, like live and let live. I think that's the best way to put it. But yeah, I guess we can play now.
But they shouldn't be able to dictate to you how you should live your life, provided you're not infringing on the rights of others. These are the
Agreed.
type of liberals who value free speech and who've always advocated for free speech, because without free speech, it's really hard to do all of the other things. It's really hard to
Agreed.
have democracy without freedom of speech. It's really hard to have the marketplace of ideas without freedom of speech. And it's really hard to object against authoritarians without freedom of speech. So freedom of speech has
True.
always been a core value for traditional liberalism. And so
Pause.
these are the types of values and the liberalism that I'm referring.
So an idea came up to my mind, and that goes back to free speech and kind of the decay of it here in Canada, at least. So here, like Trudeau messed up really hard. He's a control freak, and he wants to create a dictatorship in Canada. And basically, he created laws and rules where now he kind of controls the media. And on top of that, like most of the things are filtered here. Like we cannot access as easily like content from outside Canada. Like they push forward like Quebec and Canada content here in Canada, and we became in some kind of bubble there, and this affected like some content creator. I don't know if guys know about semi-ordinary guy or semi-origin. I forgot his Muna R. Like he is like a programmer on YouTube. It's semi-ordinary gamer, I think.
I've definitely heard the name. I don't think I'm too familiar with his
I
content. But
I will
are you
link it here.
cool?
Semi-ordinary gamer, I believe that's the channel. Yeah,
So are you against kind of their thing of kind of pushing Canadian content? Like it kind of made sense to me. Like you've got this kind of larger market with like more money going into like both. Oh, nice.
by accident.
Going into both movies and music, everything like that. Like there's a little bit more money in the market down below, like the US market. So it would make it tougher to compete with that particular market. So it seemed like they were cutting out, was it 20% of your content had to be Canadian original. Like, granted, this was a few years ago when I was up there, but it seemed interesting, and it seemed like it is a way to try to kind of level the playing field. But I don't know. I kind of got the impression that you were against the Canadian content being pushed.
Yeah. I'm kind of, well, it's more like the approach they had. Like that kind of laws, I'm kind of fine if it's within Canada, but here's the thing. That kind of bothered me is what Trudeau is trying to do. It's really hard for me to explain it like very well, but there's a video on some ordinary gamer, some ordinary gamer that explained it very well. So basically, it's a double-edged sword where, because Canada has created that stupid law, or I should say, because Trudeau, that freaking, I hate him so much. Like, I didn't vote for him any of these his term he got. It's a miracle he is still like on that stupid seat. But that,
because I swear it was still a thing when I was up there. And when I was up there, I finally remember the dude's name, Harper. So yeah, like this was a while ago.
yeah, that's
but,
like 15
that was
years
still
ago.
a thing. Because like exactly. So that's what I was gonna say. So I know that they were still doing it, and I think it was 20% Canadian content at the time. Like any given radio station or TV station couldn't just be playing like US content or like top whatever Billboard songs. They had to have at least a percentage that was Canadian.
It's still
So I don't know if
around.
that like originates with Trudeau. He might have pushed it like harder, but is
Well,
it
it's
that you're talking about,
it's
or is
different.
it even more?
It's different.
Oh,
What
okay.
you mentioned, I agree with that. That's a good idea. But what Trudeau pushed for and what he made a law is basically, um, Canada is like you have all of these choices. For example, like you have a Canadian channel about gaming, and you have a USA gaming channel. Like by law, that Canadian will be promoted over the USA one. So because of that, what it creates is like two ecosystem. Like YouTube hates it because they're like, oh, we cannot like push you some content from that place because of
I
your
didn't
law.
even think about that, like the new platforms or whatever. Well, I mean, new, like, YouTube's been around forever, but I didn't think about that because so like when I went to school up there, when they were kind of talking about it, it seemed like it leveled the playing field for like some Canadian bands or whatever. Because not only would you have to compete with the entire country, but then you'd have to compete with the entire US as well to like chart, to like get your album anywhere. Where if they're pushing 20% content or whatever from Canadian bands, you get bands like the Tragically Hip. Like I had never heard of them in the US, but they were just like the biggest thing when I was in Canada. Which granted, I mean, like they seem like a decent band, but that just never crossed the border. And like we had bands like Rush or someone that would kind of spend more time in the US, but they weren't I don't know. We didn't have a lot of crossovers from Canadian artists that made it huge, it seemed like, in the music industry. But I don't know. I didn't think about like YouTube where they have to like push Canadian creators. That is interesting.
Yeah. So
So is it a completely different like interface with YouTube
yeah,
then? Or
exactly. Yeah, like there's
Huh.
still the algorithm where you get suggested stuff you're more inclined to see, but the search result are sometimes messed up and mixed up, where it really pushes a lot of Canadian content. Even when you search on Google and that kind of stuff, it affects like every sphere. So the
Huh.
double-edged sword is, okay, you get to see more like Canadian content, but because of that, like advertiser and other stuff, they're like, we hate Canada now, so we advertise you less outside of Canada, if you know what I mean. So here in Canada, oh, we all see
Huh.
that Canadian content, but you go outside because Trudeau was stupid, like the content is less likely to fall on you. So
That makes sense. I guess I hadn't thought of,
so
progressing that into our current era with the internet and like YouTube and everything. Damn. Okay, that does kind of change my thoughts on it. It felt like it was kind of leveling the playing field, but
it's not.
if it's content creators from the world, I don't know. So, that is
So to
interesting.
give you
I'm just wondering because you can choose like what country or whatever your channel is like located in. I'm wondering if anyone games that system to say that they're Canadian content or whatever, so that they're more put forward in certain places.
Maybe.
But that's
But
interesting.
here's the catch: like some ordinary gamer, when he really well explained that dynamic, that was wonderful because he said, "Oh yeah, because of that stupid law that I ate," and he is quite big, and he still ate it. He is like, because of that stupid law I ate, I maybe I will move to the USA. So I'm like, oh yeah, I feel you, man. I feel you 100% because like I poorly explained it because it makes much more sense in French, but I just cannot properly explain that law. But I get his feeling. I fully understand. Now it will be harder for Earth that for us like to really go outside of our bubble, if you know what I mean. It's basically what
That
China
sucks.
is doing. So China, like they
Yeah,
push a lot of
it's reminding me a lot of that.
China push a lot of their Chinese content. That's why we don't see that often Chinese stuff, if you know what I mean. Canada is like starting to do the same with that new law. So basically, we become China, but we are not quite China yet.
I hmm,
We are like
I wonder because like
smaller
a
China.
lot of my suggested content is also like U.S. content. I'm wondering if there isn't some sort of relation that like for your top recommended news things or whatever on your homepage, does it put like a lot of like CNN and whatever on there, or is it more of like a Canadian type of deal?
They will put forward more Canadian thing. Like one perfect
So I don't
example,
know. I guess ours does it without having that stupid law too,
like
in a weird way.
like for example, I take my cell phone and I never logged on to my YouTube on my cell phone for some reason. And if I logged on YouTube with that, uh, I will see a few results of the kind of stuff I watch on my cell phone, but I will also see bunch of Canadian stuff. And like I will need to search or dig deeper to find like USA or stuff from outside of Canada. Um,
Huh.
so yeah, we'll need to search or like yeah, that's like the best way to find stuff. But it's not everyone that search, you know. Um,
That is interesting. I guess I just never thought of that, but I need to check out that video and see what some ordinary
but
gamer his
it's
explanation on
been
it.
at least 6 months. It's like that, at least 6 months. So
Mhm.
you will need to search. He does a lot of videos. Um, so I'm sure it's still up, but good luck finding the video. That's the catch.
Thanks.
I will actually search for the video. I'm curious. Maybe we could cover that on a future episode. So I will
Yeah, that'd be cool.
actually look into it. But this is a really good content creator. I really like what I've seen from him. Um, so yeah, I highly recommend that guy. And it's funny because he is some ordinary gamer, but usually his videos are not really about gaming. So that's the irony on that. But anyhow, enough of that tangent. Like um I will give another good example. Like on Facebook, there are many posts I did share in the past, and because of that law, I cannot access these posts anymore. And it's not because um it's been removed or deemed inappropriate for Facebook. It's because I'm in Canada, and that's disgusting. Because that's the reason they give. This content is no
Yeah.
longer available in your country. So I'm like, are you kidding me? And this happens so often since that stupid law made by stupid Trudeau that I truly deeply hate. So yeah, like many posting, and they were not offensive. They were like some of them were like someone making jokes about something. But
Hmm.
because I'm in Canada, I no longer access this shit. So like
So,
next stop is like I'm gonna be China and I won't be able to leave Canada anymore.
Yeah.
well, not unless you're correct socially. Um, Out of curiosity, do you feel like you guys have freedom of speech up there?
Yes and no. Um,
Hmm.
it depends with who. um, like some people get easily offended, so with them you don't really have freedom of speech, but it really depends who you're
Well, I
talking
mean, do you
to.
ever have the right to not offend someone? I don't know. Like, people are going to be you can take offense at anything. So I don't know if you're ever going to not offend, but
Like
I don't know.
when I'm with my family, it's sad to say, but I feel like I don't really have freedom of speech. I need to say really politically correct. But when I'm with my friends, we don't give a crap about anything, and we just like we have freedom of speech. But when I'm with my family, oh my, that's a different story. So it really depends with whom you interact with. But because of that law,
Hmm.
Trudeau is kind of controlling you with a remote. I truly hate Trudeau. Anyhow, you can play the video.
Referring to within this video. I'm not referring to the more American understanding of what the term liberal now has become to mean, which is often used to describe neoliberals or social justice activists and all that kind of stuff. I'm not referring to that type of liberalism. I'm talking about undiluted, old school British liberalism. But recently, it feels as though Britain and many other Western nations have either decided to forget about these values or have simply decided to stop defending them. I've seen citizens being arrested over social media posts.
Harry Miller, your name has become synonymous
Pause.
with people who have been dealt with.
I can see.
Do you guys fear that that's coming?
Yeah.
Like, there was the whole truck protests and everything, and I saw the funding get taken away and stuff like that. Do you feel like that's next?
That's what I was going to bring up. It has happened. Here in Canada, the truckers were considered a terrorist group. Now you may think it's a joke, but it's not. Some truckers went in jail for protesting. I'm not joking. They went in jail. Like, their bank account got froze for terrorism because they were protesting. And again, that's because of Trudeau. And again, I did not vote for that jerk. And the worse than that, Trudeau on his new term, he got like I believe 2 years ago or 3 years ago, he was elected in minority. So this means it's not even the majority that people that voted for him. Like, it's just because his party had more seats than the other parties, and people voted for different parties. But like, if you calculate every other parties, it's really hard to explain. But basically, for example,
Yeah.
his party had 50 seats. Party B and C both had like 15 seats. And there's another party that had also 15 seats. Or no, better than this, a better example. Each other, like, his party is 50 seats, and the three other parties involved have each 20 seats. There are 60
Yeah.
seats for others and 50 for him. He got elected just because his party is bigger than the others. Basically, that's what happens. His party is bigger than the others,
Yeah.
so he won the election.
I mean, I'm not saying that I'd be happy with that or anything, but at least you guys have more than two parties. Like, with us, it is option A or B. And when you don't like option A or B, like, you're literally just taking away from one of them by voting for C, and it's never going to be like an actual thing. So I don't know. It just kind of, I don't know if there is one that's going to make everyone happy, like a form of I don't know, election or whatever. But yeah, I feel for you. That definitely sucks. I have thrown my vote away almost every single time, and I've never voted for the person who actually won. So good times.
Yeah, like, yeah, yeah. So to go back to the truckers, they were considered terrorists, and they made up so many lies. And on top of that, Trudeau with the truckers, he did abuse of power. So like, there's a specific emergency state law where when emergency state is declared, uh, they basically take away a bunch of laws to give full power to like the Canada government and that kind of shit. And he did that in purpose on a Friday after like closing time. So because it happened like in a specific time in the month, he had full power and authority for like a full week. And it's like law didn't really matter anymore. And this is when he really took over, and he basically deemed like the trucker being like these terrorist people. And man, it's so disgusting. Like, yeah, I
What's
have
the kind of general feeling up there on that? Like, were people disgusted with it, or did most people just not care?
here in Canada we could not talk about that because of like the media making it like it's all of the trucker. The trucker are villains, and they're discussing like media were basically controlled by government, uh, and that was around the same time where uh, Trudeau wanted to like control even more media. So yeah, this is what I'm talking about. Like he wants dictatorship. That's what Trudeau wants. Um, at least based on what I've heard and like heard from many people. Like a lot of people are aware that Trudeau wants dictatorship. He is a threat for democracy here in Canada, to be honest. And I'm not exaggerating. Like what he did to the trucker is straight up this. And it's funny because um maybe not just like his dad. His dad wasn't like that, a base. He's like, nah, 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 nah. His dad wasn't like that. Like his dad was no saint. He was no
No, he means
hero.
his
But
real dad.
oh, just like his dad. Um.
No, I'm just kidding. The rumor that he's actually Castro's kid or whatever.
Oh, okay.
But I was just wondering, like, so even though you couldn't like talk about it on social media, was kind of like the general, I don't know, feeling kind of
People,
that this is a bad thing, that you could see that this is moving towards a dictatorship type deal, that this
everyone,
seems to be done in the shadows.
everyone hated the truckers because media and government has told them to aid the truckers. That's basically what was going on. And if you were for the truckers, you were wrong. It's as simple as that. Like if you would turn on the TV, you would see like, oh yeah, the truckers have set out a fire and it's all chaotic. But when you really go there, it wasn't like that. And sometimes that was like Trudeau supporters that were kind of making the mess just to like say get out like truckers and stuff. It wasn't even the truckers that were making the mayhem, but yet they were blamed on because they were like the villains. They're like the monsters against the construct, against the government. So again, like people were kind of like brainwashed. It's how it was with the truckers. That's the sad truth. And I used to, I won't say I was really friend with the guy, because if I was really a friend with that guy, he wouldn't have cut off the bridge the way he did because I disagreed with him. But I will say, like, I was close to someone that was against the trucker, and he hated me for supporting the truckers, and he basically cut off all ties with me because I was supporting the truckers. So that's to
Wow.
give you an idea that if 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 you were for the truckers, you were basically crazy. Um, and the same goes for
Hmm.
vaccine and mask,
I
bro.
was gonna say we had very similar things with like masking and vaccination, and I lost friends over that as well. But I mean, that seems pretty universal. Like you guys would have also experienced that, plus the trucker thing.
Yeah,
That is
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah, I've lost friends of mine for probably even worse reasons. And one word I can't say because YouTube censoring and all that, but the other I can easily say, like stalking, pretty much. But yeah, I lost friends. Yeah,
so yeah, like the truckers, what they really wanted to do is like for life to get back at normal. that's what they were really wanting, because some of the regulations, some of the laws, because of that stupid pandemic, were kind of hindering their capacity of work, their job. It was getting in the way of their job, and they were like, enough of that crap. Let's do a protest. And the end result, the laws loosen up after. So even if government aided them, it did something. Like the trucker didn't like go to jail for nothing. Like they went to jail for freedom, and we got freedom, if you know what I mean. Like, um,
Do you feel like speech is more enshrined in law now, or I don't know? Do you think this could happen again?
yeah, for sure. Because especially if we keep freaking Trudeau in power, like it will be worse. I truly hate that monster, man. Like next election, I will look again. I think it's 2 years from now or 1 year from now. It's soon. I know it's soon, because Trudeau's second term kind of started by the pandemic. That's also why we got kind of tricked into it, because not everyone could go to vote.
Yeah, that seemed a bit sketchy.
Yeah, but it's just because the years lined up. That's the biggest issue. But I will look into it. But I think it's either by the end of this year, the next election, or next year. It's one of the two, because it's been a good like 4 years, and usually every 4 years we have new elections. Um, so yeah, like Trudeau did so many sketchy things. Man, I hate him so much. You have no idea. Like when I hear people complaining about Trump and the others, I don't live under them, but I feel like any other president anywhere else is better than Trudeau. Like Trudeau is clearly there to like assert an authoritarian state. Um, like the way he deals with stuff and the way he solves stuff. Like the trucker is like the perfect example, the prime example. Like what he did to the trucker made him lose a lot of popularity, because after, when people kind of looked at it when it was all solved, they were like, oh, actually Trudeau was kind of too far there. Um, and a lot of people were like, you should have lost his presidency. Like there were petitions out there for him to lose his job over the trucker after the aftermath, you know. There were a lot of talk of him just being pushed away because of what he did to the trucker. So yeah, I guess we can play the video now.
With the police because of their offensive tweeting. Can you explain to viewers exactly what's happened to you recently and also in the past in your relationship with the police?
They came to me because I tweeted about gender critical content. I'd famously retweeted what they described as a limerick. It wasn't a limerick, it was a piece of feminist doggerel. Nevertheless, somebody,
Pause.
I don't know who they were, they decided.
To close off on the trucker tangent, I wanted to add something else very funny and interesting. I may already have said it in the past, so maybe I will repeat myself, but it's still worth mentioning because we talked about truckers. The cops from Ottawa and the places where the truckers basically hit, they thought the truckers were cool, and they were right. So a lot of cops actually joined the truckers. So what happened? Like the FBI of Canada, it's not really the FBI there. It's called GRC, Gendarmerie Royale Canada. Like it's like the state cop. They basically came in and they took over like every places where we had the truckers, and we're like, okay, all the cops are relieved of their duty. Now it's like the FBI that took over because like the cops were siding with the truckers. So that's a fun fact. Like when the FBI step in because your cops are with your protester, that's like, wow, you know things are kind of crazy there.
Yeah, I think there's probably examples of that happening here too, but damn.
It's like,
so can I ask, like, if you had like a VPN or something, like it would allow you most likely to set your whatever global positioning is somewhere else. Would you guys get in trouble if you accessed like Facebook or something through a VPN saying you're in a different country and then posted information? Do you fear that like what happened to this guy where he essentially reposted somebody's he said that it was feminist dogma and then he was given hate speech charges for it, I believe.
To be honest, eventually I think we will get to that point here in Canada if Trudeau stays. If he has another term, I think we will turn like that. I really wish and hope he get pushed down, because if he gets a third term, we will go into a dictatorship, and this will be one of the things we will do. And I know that because here it's really retarded and stupid, but we don't have limits of mandate. So as long as they can stay, unlike like USA, that's one thing I envy from you. Like you guys, like one president can only stay there for 8 years. Us, we don't have anything like that. Like as long as they are elected, they can come back.
We've had one that stayed for longer, so it can be done. But yeah, it is a precedent. It's supposed to only be 2 terms, and that's it.
But us, no, it's not like that.
Yeah.
As long as their seats win enough, boom, boom. That's part of the issue. That's why I'm really scared, and that's why I at least in Canada we have a decay of democracy, to be honest. Especially with Trudeau, that strip away so many rights and that creates so many rules and laws to hinder people movement and like to stop people living, basically. I'm sure we will be one of the first few country that will have like digital ID and that kind of shit. I can bet we are the first country that will have that if Trudeau stays.
I don't know, man. We've got a politician, Nikki Haley, who's running as in the primaries for the Republicans. She's talking about doing some sort of digital ID so that you can no longer be anonymous on the internet. We might beat you on that whole digital ID thing.
Yeah. But I can bet if we get another term, we will be closer from that stupid digital ID shit. It actually had started with the vaccine stuff. We had like vaccine passport here in Quebec. I don't know about the rest of Canada, but
we had them here too. And somehow they were able to access your phone data too and send text messages telling you to go and telling you if you were anywhere near people that were infected. I don't know. We had a similar thing here, but yeah, I hope it doesn't lead to that because I can foresee some very bad things.
Me too. Authoritarian state.
But they were talking about like if you're gonna comment on like YouTube or Facebook, you need to show digital ID or whatever. So you would always be associated with your comments.
Wow.
I don't know. That seems tough.
That's disgusting. Yeah, I guess you can play now.
Decided that this had caused them great offence, and they contacted Humberside Police, and Humberside Police then contacted me.
Members of Parliament contacting social media platforms asking them to demonetize creators. Hate speech laws have been enforced and, while well intended, have often been abused. I've seen young people gluing themselves to the
some of the statement the trucker ads were considered hate speech, but Trudeau just going out there and demonizing him was fine. It wasn't hate speech. But he was telling all of the worst shit you can say to someone. But because that's Trudeau, that's fine. But when it's the truckers out there, it's wrong. It's hate speech, of course. Anyhow, you can play.
Well, the worst individual aspect of any one of those truckers can now be applied to all of them. Like I remember somebody at one of the protests had a flag that is somewhat offensive, and so everybody is now believing in that flag. It really sucks. I agree with you. It feels like it would be nice if they did kind of, if they're going to do that, then fine. Then the worst in the government is how everyone in the government gets labeled. It doesn't seem like they'd go for that. So I don't know. Why would they do this and then say these guys are all doing hate speech because one person said something horrible or had a flag that's offensive? Yeah, it is sad. I hope it doesn't get to that, but seems like they're kind of moving towards that.
the floor in order to protest against people they disagree with speaking at their university. I personally have a lot of respect for the spirit of protest. I think it's good that young people are passionate about things and care about things. I respect their passion. I think it's good for people to be passionate rather than apathetic. But I guess where we disagree would probably be on the methods. I personally think that if you disagree with ideas, you should engage with those ideas and you should challenge them. Gluing yourself to the floor, while it's definitely a choice, it's probably not the most productive way to conduct these kind of debates or conversations. It's really interesting to me because universities were supposed to be the hub for philosophical debate. It's supposed to be where you explore new ideas as well as challenge them. But it's really sad to see that these days many young students feel as though they have to censor themselves or go along with things that they don't believe in just for the sake of peace. But I can also understand why when we see students getting into trouble for expressing different views. We've also seen comedians being told what kind of jokes they can and can't say. And now we have the introduction of the online safety bill, which some people worry could lead to more restrictions on freedom of speech online.
Number two, it attacks end-to-end encryption and empowers the people to start spying on your private messages. So Ofcom under the Act can issue a notice under section 122, which requires these private providers to start scanning your private messages.
Pause.
Some of these providers like WhatsApp have said they'd actually...
What's being showcased right now, online safety bill, crackdown on harmful social media content, agreed. It's very similar to one of the laws I mentioned before that Trudeau said that he created, that instated, like part of that really long law where only Canadian content should be showcased to Canadians. It's similar because it basically cracked down in many outsiders' content. Going back to what I said, like, because I'm in Canada, I no longer can see these videos on Facebook, or I can no longer see these videos on YouTube and that kind of stuff. So yeah, we have similar stuff here, parallel with Britain, I guess.
Huh. But it sounds like what they're making them do is like even scan like your private messages. Do you know if your private messages are being scanned by the platforms to make sure that there's no hate speech in it or anything like that? Like not your posts on Facebook, but say like your DMs or whatever.
Not yet, and I hope this won't be a thing, but clearly, like on Facebook, like one time I did a comment and it wasn't harmful, like I had satire in it and I was laughing at something and they were like, oh, it's harmful, so we removed it. I was like, bruh, context matter, what the fuck?
Yeah, well, I mean, like you had a comedian, now I'm blanking on his name, but he had a joke about a now I can't even remember that other kid's name, but he had a joke about a kid, and basically it was just saying like I thought he was the Make-A-Wish kid, but he never died. He got fined like
Wow.
$30,000 for that because it was considered hate speech because he was making fun of this kid. I don't know, like it does scare me. Both Britain and Canada kind of have this. I don't know. I hope for the sake of comedy there is free speech, because I don't know how you could say some very funny jokes without risking offending somebody. And I don't think every bit of offense is necessarily hate speech, but maybe I'm wrong. But yeah,
This reminds me of a story we had here in Canada. I don't think you guys have heard about it, and I will try my best to like summarize it well in English. But basically, what happened? We had a comedian. He was poking fun at a singer, and it was more like,
yeah, that's the one that I was talking about. So he was a kid. He had some sort of disability. In the U.S., we've got this thing called Make-A-Wish Foundation. So like they grant a special wish for people who are kind of dying or whatever.
yeah.
So he made the joke that like that kid was in that program, but he never died. Turns out, no, he just had like kind of a deformity, but you know, he was propped up as like a singer. He went on, I think he sang for the Queen.
Yeah,
Like if I remember right,
yeah.
he made it like all the way up to there.
That's the same
But
story.
yeah, he just kind of poked fun at it, and his joke was that this kid never died.
And
well, apparently that's hate
and
speech, and it's like
he went further. Like he was saying he doesn't know how to sing and that kind of stuff. And the
Yeah, but I mean, like, is that hate speech?
no,
Like, I've said
it's
that about
not.
so many pop singers with this auto-tune thing. This kid wasn't using
Yeah.
auto-tune, like, to be clear, but still,
A-
I've said that, and I don't think that's hate
and
speech.
and the weirdest part of that story, it's not even the kid's parent that sued Mike Ward, it's the government. They went to the mother.
Well, it was a special tribunal. Like, it wasn't
Yeah,
even like a real court thing. So, like, he couldn't get a real lawyer and he couldn't get the real defense.
yeah.
It seems
Like
strange.
what happened is, oh yeah, there's that joke online I don't like. Okay, so mother of that kid, do you want to sue the guy? And they were like, oh, okay, if I can make money out of it. So they basically were asked to sue the comedian. And that was like kind of disgusting because this is when the government is like going a bit too far. I think like they shouldn't like get mixed up to it. Like I get it if it's the parents and the kids that are like, oh, let's sue them, but they were asked. That's when I feel like it's authoritarian very much. Like it's not really like free will and liberal. If
We strongly suggest you sue.
yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting.
So yeah, they really like the government was like, oh, let's get to it, and he was basically forced into like paying that kid and that family. Um, it's not only the kid, it's the family. It's like okay, so you can no longer like make jokes, and even there, like
That's what it seems
it
like.
wasn't really aimed at the kid; it was aimed at the idea, and
Yeah.
all of his sketch and numbers were not really like saying, "Oh, that kid should die" or stuff like that. But they twisted.
No, it was more a joke on himself being stupid, like not understanding that, like, no, this isn't the Make-A-Wish thing where like it really is kind of poking fun at himself. But I could understand how they could say, like, what? He's saying this kid should have died. It's like, no, that's a very so I guess it's there is a term for it, and I'm kind of blanking on it, but it's kind of like weaponized hostile misinterpretation
Yeah,
is what that would be. You choose the worst possible way to reinterpret what somebody's saying. That's clearly what they meant.
yeah,
It might not be a great joke for everybody, but you know, the way that you get great jokes is the same way that you get bad jokes. Sadly, they come from the same place.
Yep.
I agree with that. Do you want to add something more, DC?
No.
Okay.
To actually leave the UK rather than break end-to-end encryption on their platforms. If they do that, millions of people will be deprived of a secure way to message each other, and this could particularly impact things like victims of domestic violence who might be subject to things like spyware. It might impact parents like myself who want to share pictures of their kids securely with family members rather than post them on social media. You know, it might impact those of you who want to send private messages to each other with disappearing messages so that, you know, they're not going to end up on social media. So really, millions of us rely on the privacy and security that end-to-end encryption gives us, and the government is going to be attacking that with the so-called Online Safety Act. Number 3 is the attack on freedom of expression. Companies are going to be required to start scanning your posts before you even publish them, and taking down more content which is deemed possibly illegal, or taking down content which breaks their community guide.
This is their version of our law that Muna, basically our ordinary guy, made a video about. That's I hear very very similar shit with what we actually got. It's almost the same thing. There are small differences, but I can see where they picked it from. I can fully see it now. After hearing that, I'm like, okay, this is where it's coming from. That stupid law we got. That's what I wanted to add. Anything else to add, Gray or DC?
Nope. No.
Go ahead, Timon. No, not really. Just, you know, sadly, it just seems like the argument that I keep hearing is like, well, why do you need the privacy? It's like, it's none of your business. Just, you know, you should have a way to privately communicate with people if you want to. The platform shouldn't be able to just look through anything. But I don't know. It does seem like, there is a difference between a direct message and an actual post on social media,
Yeah.
but I don't know. It just seems so strange. I guess I wouldn't have thought that like a direct message or a private message could somehow be against. Well, I guess it could lead to like harassment or something. So I guess it could be against TOS. But I don't know. I guess I wouldn't imagine them scanning everything like that to see whether or not you should be banned. But it's interesting. I guess I just didn't think of that.
Yeah.
Guidelines. So you're going to see a lot more of that when you go to publish something. Actually, this post is not able to be published because we think it breaks our community guidelines. A lot of the time, as you know, these algorithms are not great, and stuff which is perfectly fine to be posting gets wrongly censored and taken down. So we're going to be moving into an age of increased internet censorship here in the UK.
I think it's really
Pause.
important for us to address these
Censorship will also be a thing in Canada. It's actually already a thing. Like try to find like posts about truckers, vaccine, or government. Good luck finding these here in Canada. So censorship.
I mean, we supposedly have free speech here, but everything got censored with like either community guidelines or community notes, or like we had a whole bunch of weird, special disease messages that popped up and would tell you like, don't listen to this. This is not the truth. I don't know. Even where we supposedly have laws to enshrine and instill the free speech, they're finding ways around it. So I don't know. I'm glad that we have it enshrined in our laws, but it doesn't bode well if you guys and Britain are doing this.
Yeah.
We tend to follow at some point.
Like, now, is it fair to say that part of society has a decay because censorship is a thing and now freedom of speech is dying? Is it fair to say now that aspect, at least, is kind of wrong and bad? It's a setback, I think.
I could definitely agree with like certain parts of it are decaying. Just if you're saying like society as a whole, it's like, but there's so many good things. But yeah, I agree. This does seem like it is decaying or drastically
changing,
reducing the stability of free speech.
Yeah. Like, I'm worried about that, especially if Trudeau stays around longer than he does. Anyhow, you can play now.
Increasing restrictions that we're seeing on freedom of speech, because personally I don't believe that anyone should be able to tell me what I should think or what I should say, and I definitely don't think we should allow anyone to dictate for us what kind of information we can and can't access, which is why I like NordVPN. So my
Trudeau, watch your video.
So I gotta say that's a pretty awesome ad though for NordVPN. It seems to fit right into this whole content and everything.
Yeah.
Do you know, could you guys get around your content restrictions if you did do like a VPN or something like that?
That's the thing. I don't know. I don't think so, because it's so like deep into like internet as a platform. Maybe.
Because I know from talking to other creators in different countries, they do have like country restrictions and stuff. So even to like stream, some of them have to use like a VPN. Otherwise, it won't let them even access like YouTube. So I don't know. I was just wondering if that is an option or if that would somehow be illegal.
Maybe. I to be honest, I don't know too much about these details, but I'm curious to look into it. So actually, I have two things to look into after the stream. When can I kick out Trudeau, and if I could use some VPN to escape that stupid law? That's one thing.
Well, the last election was 2011, 2021, but I don't know exactly how long since it was that like shortened. I forget what he called it, but it wasn't the full 4 years or whatever. It was the special election you guys had.
Yeah. It again, that goes back to what I said. Trudeau almost got kicked out because of the the trucker stuff. He almost got kicked out, really. Like, at least twice since he got reelected, there were instances where he almost got voted out and kicked out. Like at some point, they even
I
like
remember that was the news that we heard here was, oh, he's on his way out. Like they're going to, it wasn't, yeah, I can't remember the exact term that they did for it, but yeah, it sounded like he was going to be voted out. It's like, oh, okay.
yeah, that's like
Interesting.
at some point he even got blocked in some of the votes. I can't remember when exactly, but at some point like he was kind of blocked out because he lost trust. Um, but that's a long time ago, and I can't remember what it implied. But yeah, Trudeau is not a good prime minister. He's shit. You can play now.
So my fiance has been using NordVPN for a while, and so he recommended it to me. And I've actually quite enjoyed my experience with them so far. They're really straightforward to set up, which is great if you're not tech savvy, because I'm definitely not tech savvy. So because I was already familiar with the product and I knew I really wanted to make this video, I was really excited when they reached out because it seemed like the perfect fit. The stars aligned. Having a free internet is something that's really important to me. I do think that as adults, we should be able to decide for ourselves what information we want to access, which is why I really like NordVPN, because they let me do that without worrying about things like censorship. They hide my IP address and they encrypt my data, which is great for protecting me against cyber criminals who are trying to access and track my information. Now, this is really handy if you're someone who connects to public Wi-Fi service, say like in a library or a coffee shop. There have been many reports that cyber crimes are on the rise. So I do think it's more important than ever to be really diligent about your online security. Now, I know this is such a cliche reason for liking a VPN, but it's such a good feature. I like that NordVPN lets me change my location so I can access more shows on Netflix. There are shows that I can't access due to licensing issues, but Americans can. And so knowing that information, I did indeed change my location. I became an American, and life has...
Congrats. So I know we're watching a commercial here, and she's doing a good job and bringing up a bunch of good points on why you'd want a VPN. I kind of want a VPN for that reason. Like the encryption would be great, but kind of just for streaming, like the different countries' rights to different shows, like that would be awesome. But yeah, I was kind of hoping that she would mention if it would get her around this particular censorship, which it sounds like it would. So I don't know. You might want to look into that, but I
Yeah.
don't know if you could then trace back your like Facebook or whatever and then be criminally liable for posting stuff against what you're supposed to. I don't know. Interesting. But yeah, VPNs not bad for streaming different countries, different material.
Yeah.
has been bliss. It's very easy to set up NordVPN, and you can set up to 6 different devices. So sign up to an exclusive NordVPN deal by clicking the promo link in my description, or you can use my promo code PatienceXena to get 4 extra months on your 2-year plan. It's risk-free with NordVPN's 30-day money-back guarantee. Thanks NordVPN for sponsoring this video. I think when it comes down to it, the problem that many of us have in liberal countries is that we assume that these values are always going to inherently be around and therefore don't need to be defended, when that's not necessarily true. And we definitely shouldn't take them for granted. There are many parts of the world where there is no real democracy or freedom of speech or freedom of expression. And some of us come...
I agree with everything she said. And because we got it, we don't feel like we can lose it because we got it. But that's only after you lose it that you realize, damn, I had it.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it is one of those cliche sayings that, like, you don't realize what you got till it's gone. But yeah, there's been so many times in my life where that has happened. Damn, I do not want this to happen to us, and especially if it's happening to both Britain and Canada.
Yeah.
Like, I can just imagine we're next on this. So
Yep.
Guys are next.
I'm gonna try and fight it before it goes there.
Guys are next.
Yeah, we're next.
Oh shit! But I do see your message, Timid. I'll message you later. I've been a jerk.
Can play now.
come from countries like that. I'm not sure I'm convinced that liberalism comes naturally to human beings. I actually think that it probably doesn't come naturally to us, which could be the reason why it's a more modern way of running civilizations. And this could also be the reason why when you don't actively work to maintain these values, you start to see people default back to anti-liberal ways. I mean, look at many young people today. We assume that they're going to be liberal and that they're going to hold these modern values just because they're young, but yet many of them are pro pro censorship, pro cancel culture, and they believe that
Pause.
their beliefs should not be up for debate. There is
That's damn right, first of all. And second, yes, I will poke fun at both sides, but like leftists, they will hate when the right talks about something and they disagree with the right, and the right wing people are doing the same. So yeah, people hate adversity, I guess.
Yep.
That I think that's the best way I can put it. What do you think of that, Gary?
Yeah, I I mean, yeah, I like it's if we're not going to instill this like liberalism, the equality of opportunity and protection of individual rights, primarily liberty and property through political freedom and freedom of speech, if we're not going to like explain why that's important to each generation, perhaps they would lose it and they would fear kind of I don't know, offense as opposed to safety. It could be more progressive to care about everybody's safety. You'd be safer if, people couldn't say bad things about you. But yeah, sadly, with like freedom of speech, if it's just nice things that we're protecting, like things that everyone would agree with, there's no reason to have it. Like that was kind of the whole thing with like the ACLU supporting like literally the KKK marching in Skokie, Alabama. They thought that what they were saying was abhorrent, but they had to defend their right to actually do that. You can say things that people don't like. That was kind of the whole thing, and we've totally dropped that in America. I don't know why, but that was predominantly the overall thought. Like, I may not agree with you, but I will defend to the death your right to say this. That's not what we're saying anymore. Instead, it's, hey, don't offend this person. Somebody could possibly be offended by this thing, so you can't say it. It just seems to be turning it completely on its head and having no free speech. Again, if it's just things that everybody agrees with, like there's no reason to have free speech. It's only for those things that, others could find abhorrent.
Yeah. Really good points there. I guess we can play now.
There is nothing liberal about that whatsoever. I now refuse to call them liberals. I used to think that they were just unhinged liberals, but now I realize that they're really not liberal at all. In fact, they're very authoritarian. What I see happening in the UK in regards to free speech is definitely not limited to just us. We saw Canadians have their
Pause.
bank accounts frozen for protesting, as well as having
That goes
Hey,
back.
you guys know a little something about
That goes back to what I said, first of all. And second, an idea came up to my mind.
It's your favorite message. Or maybe you don't see this end of it. Maybe you see the other end, like you cannot post this or whatever.
Yeah.
But apparently this is what the world sees when they try and post something to you guys.
Yeah, exactly. That picture there is very present. It's everywhere in Facebook when it's like considered inappropriate for Canadian. What I wanted to share is it's funny how leftists are like they hate authoritarian people, but they will be the same way they will cancel people that don't align with what they think or say. Just taking shots again. So I guess we can play now.
Okay. I do agree with you that is happening. They are setting lines on why or what you can and can't say. But it does seem like there is like a moral intuition that they have behind that, and that's that care harm principle. They think they're preventing harm. So they think they're doing good by doing that. It is for a perceived altruistic reason. It's not for, just to be the authority and just decide what is good and bad. So I don't know. I think that sometimes gets lost that they think they're doing good at this perceived harm. They want to prevent that from happening. I don't know. We used to have a saying like sticks and stones can break your bones, but names will never hurt you. That doesn't seem to be the thing anymore. Names can really hurt you, apparently. We got to protect you from that. I I don't know. I really hate this change. It does seem to have happened in my lifetime. At one point, we were championing, like, listen, anyone can call you names. It doesn't matter.
Same.
But right now, this new generation does not seem to be saying that.
I agree. I remember when we were a kid, we were insulting each other, and that was fun.
For sure.
Now it's like,
Now
you're
it's
bullying me. Go in jail.
Having their access to the news restricted. I've also seen Australians being arrested for criticizing lockdowns on social media. And while America seems to have more protections when it comes to free speech because of their constitution, it seems as though it hasn't been able to make them completely immune to this stuff either. People fought really hard to put these values in place.
She's completely right. I didn't get a chance to read everything that was in that, like blurb that she had on the screen, but definitely with that disease that we all experienced, that definitely curtailed a whole lot of free speech. There was a lot of, things that you couldn't say about that. And then that made it for public safety. You couldn't say a bunch of things. You couldn't have alternate opinions. It had to be like the direct one from the correct authorities. It really showed me that we don't have this freedom of speech. Like, we don't have this thing that nobody else has, which I had kind of been told that from being a kid. Like, we have this special law that nobody else in the world has, where we've truly enshrined freedom of speech. You can say anything. If that was true, it no longer is. But I wonder if that was a fairy tale when I was told it as a kid.
Yeah, and what you mentioned happened here in Canada as well. Like, at that time, I was very anti-vax for many reasons. Like, I think vaccine in general are a good thing, but in this specific moment with the pandemic and all, it wasn't great because they rushed through things. And at that time, I was also working at McGill University. I had a lot of coworkers that were very smart, and they knew stuff about vaccine and stuff. And one of them mentioned something that hit me hard. It was like, there's two types of vaccine. There's like the meat base and the plant base. And the plant base is like the safest vaccine you can have. And the meat base, it's more dangerous for the health, and it's also easier to produce because it's meat base. And the plant is more like natural, and the meat is more like artificial. And there's much more side effect to a meat-based vaccine than a plant-based vaccine. And the biggest reason why it was meat-based, it's because it was easier and faster to produce. So because of,
I was gonna say that it's probably a trade-off. Like, you have this world that's going through it. You need this as quickly as possible. So, all right, we'll deal with it. I could understand, possibly doing that trade-off, but
and I've seen that, and I was like, okay, I'm suspicious of that. So, like, I did share a lot of posts about, like, disliking the COVID vaccine. And again, I believe a lot of vaccine are good. Like, vaccine are part of the reason why now we can live to 80 years old. But that specific COVID bunch of, like, magic cure that they did in, like, under a year is not good. And based on my personal experience as well, I was talking to people. I'm a social being. My grandmother always had a really strong immune system, and she passed it down to my father, and my father also has a very strong immune system. And after my grandma, because she was kind of old and worried, and she trusts the government because it's sad to say, but she's naive. She took every injection she could of that COVID crap. And guess what? Since she started injecting her body with that cure, she's sick much more often than she used to. Maybe that's just a coincidence, right? Maybe that's just one case among many. But then you hear about like all of these cases where people started bleeding, people started having injuries, people starting having bad reaction to vaccine. You're like, oh, okay, I start connecting the dots. Another case, the son of one of the coworker I had was around 25-ish years old. I can't remember the exact age, but that was a young person, and again, he was healthy until he decided to inject himself with the cure. And he started having trouble with breathing. Even after like the period of time the vaccine should be effective, he started having hemorrhoids and bunch of like disease that didn't add prior the injection. And that goes back to my discussion with my coworker. Plant-based, meat-based. Faster, safer. Do you want to be safe or fast? But
Yeah.
again, censorship. They didn't want me to voice my opinion because that goes against these pharmaceutical and these cure. Any thoughts on that? Do I sound crazy, Gray or DC?
No, in fact, what you were just saying was actually remind me of myself in 2020 because I used to go around saying things similar to that. But let's just say I did it on a level where you can clearly tell it was a lot crazier. But yeah.
What about you, Gray? Do I sound crazy?
I mean, no more than usual. No, you don't sound crazy, man. No, I understand what you're saying. I think it'd be tough to make that decision whether you're going to regret doing the slower one that's going to have less effects, or if you just get it on. I don't know. I'd kind of hate to be in that position to make that decision. I would hope that the experts are pointing me in the right direction, but I don't know. It seems like either way, you're going to have people upset that either you didn't move faster or that there are effects of this thing. Like I just don't see everybody applauding you, no matter which way you go with it.
Yep.
I agree with you. Like it's hard. We are a complex being, us humans.
Yep.
Anyhow, I guess you can play.
Place. And to be honest, I think the older generation have done a really poor job of maintaining these values. I mean, after all, it's the boomers and Gen X who are running our governments as well as our education systems. They can mock young millennials and Gen Z all day if they like, but at the end of the day, who raised and educated us? I think that those of us in the younger generations who are still sane and still care about things like...
I agree 100%. And that goes back to psychology and sociology. Like, you are the way you are because your parent raised you. There are other factors, of course, but that's one of the factors. Like, if it goes crazy, it's because crazy happened to you.
Yeah.
Just saying. What do you think of that, Gray?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think it does kind of come back to like the nature nurture thing. Like, you're right, probably, but there is some amount that the environment does affect you. So I don't know. I think for the most part you're correct, but there has to be something for the environment affecting you.
Yeah, that's true. I agree. That's why I said parenting is one thing, but other stuff are also factors.
For sure.
You can play.
like democracy as well as freedom of speech. I think it's time for us to stop allowing ourselves to be bullied by the illiberal members of our generation. I also think it's time for us to stop pretending we believe in things that we don't believe in, because all we're really doing is helping to create a society that we know we don't want to live in. When we are old enough to take over, I hope that we learn from the lessons of the generation before us, and I hope that we do a better job of maintaining these values, because I think we've now learned firsthand how easy it is for these values to start slipping away if we're not paying attention. I personally do believe that these liberal values transcend the whole left-wing and right-wing binary, because there are definitely liberal and illiberal people on both sides. Now, while I am very pro-free speech, that's not the same as being pro-speech without consequences. I just vehemently disagree with the idea of the state being the one to impose those consequences. I think it's important to clarify that I'm talking specifically in regards to offense. I don't think the state should be involved if someone says something you find offensive, but in cases
Pause.
where someone or a group of people are
I agree. The state, I feel like the state, there's a reason why it exists. Because if you don't set rules, you have anarchy, and anarchy has been proven to be kind of bad because people stop caring about like being human. They become animals a lot of times, and eventually it's chaos. And then eventually they will be like, oh, let's go back to a normal like what we used to have like before. When it's everyone does whatever, it's just not good. So I do think there's rules that should be set. But if the government goes there and say, don't say that to someone else, it's kind of like a bit stretched too far, if you know what I mean. Like, oh, these two people have that argument or whatever, and the government step in and says, you broke the law. But that was an argument, so they both like went after each other, but only one of the two parties is kind of affected by it because government took a side or something. It's a bit too far, I think. Again, um, government is important to set rules, but sometimes it goes too far. What do you think of that, Dre?
I agree with what you're saying. And I might agree with what she's saying too, when she's saying like she doesn't think that the government should be doing consequences. I just wonder what she means by she doesn't believe in consequence-free speech. That I would just like to know exactly what she's meaning by that. I'm hoping she kind of explains that a little bit more. So far, I'm on board with what she's saying, but that one phrase, kind of speech without consequence. I don't know. I would like to know what the consequences are that she's thinking of imposing that are not governmental.
Yeah.
are explicitly inciting violence, I think it's fair for authorities to investigate that. If someone says something that you don't like or something that you think is offensive, I think that you should use your free speech to respond to the person who said it. But in the mind of an authoritarian, they believe.
Okay, so if she's saying that that's the consequence is you have somebody saying, I disagree with you, hell yeah. That should be what freedom of speech
Yeah.
is. You fight freedom of speech with freedom of speech. Like,
Yeah.
you explain why you disagree with them. But, like, with comedy, for instance, like, if somebody tells a joke that you don't like, you don't have the right to then shout them down on stage. You can go ahead and use your voice to tell people that you don't like this. But if you're doing that in that particular club, since that's not what's expected, you will most likely be asked to leave. If you go to like social media or something and say, this guy offended me with this joke, fine, you have every right to do that. But I don't know. It seems to be the consequence that they're trying to ask for. And I think she's just about to get into that, is like contacting the club, telling them this comedian can never perform here again. He is offensive. He owes me an apology. Something like that. I think that's beyond the pale. But if it's just you're using your freedom of speech to say, hey, I don't like this thing that you said, fine. That seems great.
I agree.
But yeah,
I agree.
I just wonder what consequence. I think she's going to get into that whole thing, like shut the person down. They should lose their livelihood.
That's a bit too far.
That seems to be a consequence way too far. Yeah.
Yeah.
Believe that if someone says something that offends you, they should be arrested, which is why they are more than happy to give the government more power to enforce these kind of laws. I guess they assume that these laws could never possibly be used against them too. Freedom of speech is definitely something that we have to actively aim to protect, because without freedom of speech, we can't have innovation. The ability to explore different ideas as well as challenge them is what enables improvement and prosperity. And those are some of the reasons why I think free speech is really important, and why we should work hard to maintain it, and why we shouldn't allow anyone to take away our voices. If people can say the most deranged and insane things online, I don't understand why you're afraid to speak your mind. But that is it for this video. Do let me know in the comments if you've noticed any changes in your home country when it comes to free speech. Do let me know where you're from as well, because I'd be curious to know which places are the most affected by these new attitudes. If you've enjoyed this video, you may as well like and subscribe. I am also on other socials, and I also make music if you would like to check that out. Thank you so much for giving me your time today, and I will see you in my next video.
Okay.
Well, hell yeah. She definitely earned a sub and a like from me. I will be taking care of that just after this.
She is smart.
But that was a really cool video. Yeah, I like that one a lot. I would be interested to go through her comments and just kind of see, is there anyone that's saying that their speech has not been affected like in their lifetime? Because I don't know. I can't think of a country that hasn't been. But
That's true. Like what was right a few years ago, like Tropic Thunder, is very different. Tropic Thunder was a classic. And if it was made today, man, everyone involved would be canceled and sent to jail, bro.
oh yeah, there is like zero shot. Well, I mean, they did just make that Lady Ballers film. Granted, it wasn't made in Hollywood. Instead, it was the Daily Wire, like Ben Shapiro's thing, doing it. But I guess it could get made. It would just be on so much smaller of a scale and would not have those big names in it. But maybe somebody could push the envelope, but it would probably have a political message added to it.
Yeah. And you mentioned Lady Bowler. I've heard mixed things, and it doesn't look like
not
a
great.
good movie.
If you remember those like old National Lampoon's comedies, like it's that level where it's like it's gonna be one of those like direct to DVD ones. Like it's not a great comedy. It's got some moments in it, but yeah, it was not my favorite. And I love comedy. I love offensive comedy. They chose a weird route to go on this.
I'm not surprised. I'm not. Anyhow, I had a blast. That was fun to talk about that. So after that stream, what is the verdict? Is there a decay of society? Starting with Green.
You know, I think there's certain aspects that are changing. I'm not sure that it's necessarily a decay of society. There are definitely aspects of, liberalism, such as like free speech, that are being affected by this. I don't know that that's anything necessarily new. From what I'm seeing in like a lot of the news from like around the revolution and then a little bit after that, they had a lot of this very polarized, very political, one-sided news that was happening at the same time. People seem to want to say the most scandalous things about each other, and people were trying to shut that down as well then. I think, things kind of do move cyclically. I think we are currently in a cycle where, people are kind of in a little bit more protective mode. So they are kind of trying to curtail the free speech in protection of perceived harm to others. I hope this is just a cycle and it's coming to an end, this whole like cancel culture thing. It seems like there are signs that it is coming to an end. But as for society in the whole, I really don't see it as decaying. I see so many positivities, so many positive things, so many things that are so much better than any other time in history. I'd have to say that we are in a moment of transition, but it's not necessarily decay. Things are changing. But yeah, I could be wrong.
I like your points. So I will be online with you and say, I think the biggest decay we got is with freedom of speech. And I speak that from a Canadian place where there's a lot of censorship, a lot of shenanigans done by a certain jerk on power. Anyhow, in general, I do think there's a lot of advancement, a lot of really good things that happen with the more modern society, like the movies and TV shows got better. But again, there's the loss of physical media that is kind of sad to see and witness. So it's not perfect. There's good and bad. What about you, DC? Is there a decay in society, DC?
Yeah, yeah, I think that there's a huge decay. Like what you guys said, like freedom of speech is probably one of them. Yeah, I agree. I will also say a lot of things I see, like technology, oil, definitely are ruining it more. The one aspect where I think technology actually has succeeded and actually has improved us was, or yeah, or as it hasn't decay, it would have been like entertainment, like games and movies. I think that it actually improved. But apart from that, everything else is getting worse and worse.
Yeah, very interesting points. Anyhow, what do you have going on your channel, DC?
Yeah, I uploaded a video today. Yeah, and there should be a video on Friday. But yeah, trying to get some ideas. But yeah, it's been nice uploading again. But yeah.
Okay, well, knowing that future episode of Red Blue will involve less TV show and more movies, I will have more time for other streams. I will have more time for gaming, so more gaming in the making very soon. What about you, Gray? What do you have going on your channel?
Yeah, so on my actual channel, I'm like working on 4 videos. It's taken me way longer than I thought it would, so they are going to drop eventually. I swear. I swear. Um, but other than doing these lovely podcasts with you, Red Blue and Windows to Our Mind, I'm every Thursday I'm on that darn kiddos channel on the Thinkers. So yeah, check me out there, and there will be random videos that drop in the near future. I swear.
Well, this is all good news, and now I think it's the perfect time to end this. I had a blast, and I think everyone had valid points about everything.
I agree. This